Hey guys, what's up? Today I'm going to go over chapter 21, part 2 of Genesis. I'm going to put the link to part 1 in the description. So if you want to check that out for more context, please feel free to do so. I'm going to dive into this, but before I start, I kind of want to promote myself for a second, so I'll just tell you when to fast forward in the description if you want to like completely cut this out. But I love art on top of understanding consciousness, allegory, theology, and I just want to make it my life. So I'm creating a life I want to experience for me, and these are the things I've always jived with, especially as a kid. So I want to lean into that because I know that they're my gifts, and I want for anyone out there who has a gift that they doubted to stop doubting it, to stop letting doubting Thomas in your head come through and not think that you can resurrect and transcend from the limiting beliefs you have, and to give into the world what you're meant to do. Because the way you illustrate, the way you sing, the way you write, the way you talk, the way you do art, the way you cook, anything is very unique to you, and the world needs to experience it, because if it didn't, you wouldn't have that capacity to create. So I encourage all artists, anybody who doubts themselves, to lean into the things that they doubt, because we're meant to be creators. We're meant to go into the world and to share with everybody what naturally comes to us, right? So first off, I did write a children's book about consciousness. So if you have a little one in your life that you want to maybe guide in the sense of awareness between the ego and the spirit, I have a book called Who is the Voice That Lives in My Head? I'll put the link in the description as well, but you can take a look at some of the colors, some of the pages. It's a story literally about me being a kid with my mom waking up to consciousness. And like a couple of the lines are like, who is the voice that lives in my head? It says so much like to share instead of being selfish and hogging my toys, and to share with all the girls and boys. Who is the voice that says to be patient, to wait for good things? It's quite the statement. Who is the voice that says to be nice, to respect all animals from bears to mice, to be thankful and grateful for today? Why does this voice have so much to say? On top of writing that book, I want to continue it because I do believe it's a series, and it came to me at my rock bottom in my life, and I'm so grateful that it did, because it really put me on the trajectory of where I want to go now. So I have that. Also, if you're looking for a ghostwriter for songs, I love writing, so hit me up. And I also do illustration, so I love to paint. If you're looking for a children's book author, I love to paint so much, and I love to draw, I love to write, I like to do anything art expressive, and I'm leaning into all of it. So these paintings are actually also available on Etsy. You can check out the link there too. It's on my link tree, and I'll put that in the bio as well. Oh wait, and on top of something I'm also very excited for. So I'm also a graphic designer, and I want to lean into making apparel that's actually relative to the concept of I am. I see, t-shirts, it's like, oh, Jesus saves, and it's just like, Jesus ain't coming back. So I kind of want to break that and like, oh, Yahweh, he's coming. And it's like, Yahweh's an acronym. An acronym is not going to save you. Doing the inner work will. And that's kind of what I want to bring to these t-shirts. And again, no disrespect to anybody, but like, it's about consciousness. Reality is about creation and consciousness. And if we can't understand that, we're going to be chasing our tail and being miserable than ever, because we're not going to get to any other answer but those two things. So in the book of Daniel, there's the story where Daniel's in the lion's den, and what that represents is you transcending your limiting beliefs, no matter how scary they are to defeat or to meet head on, right? So Daniel was put in the lion's den by the king, who didn't actually want to put him in there, and the next day the king was surprised and so happy Daniel was saved. And it's because when you live in conviction, even when lions are there in front of you, which are referencing the concept of very scary beliefs that you might see with your two eyes, you have to know you'll be saved. You have to know you'll be able to get out of it. And that's why Daniel ended up being alive and everything was fine, because when you live in the wish fulfilled, the king, he went to bed wanting Daniel to be safe. That's the same as you listening to a mantra tape before you go to sleep when your brain is in theta state. You're reprogramming your subconscious for the right outcome, and the right outcome happened. Daniel was saved. So the back of the t-shirt looks like this. It says, saved by, what does it say? May your God, whom you serve, continually rescue you. Saved by conviction. I am that I am. Conviction is faith, right? And a lot of people confuse faith for hope. And sorry, but that's bullshit. If you have hope, that means you don't believe in what you're thinking. You have to have conviction in what you're thinking, and that's when miracles happen. So the front says Daniel, and the verse 6:16, and there's a cross there as well, very subtle hit of a cross. Yeah, so if you want to check it out, this is the quality of the fabric. I'm still doing a little bit of quality control on it. I don't know if I'm happy with it or not. I'm going to go through different people. Hopefully you can see it's like a little bit grainy, you know? And I don't know, some people like that look. They think it looks vintage. I just don't want it to look cheap. The quality of the shirt is thick. It's soft. So that's all I got going on right now. There is an embroidered shirt that I really like, but I haven't received it yet. So I don't know, if you want to risk it, you can order it, but I still don't know the quality, and I don't want to sell anything that, you know, people think sucks. Like, I want to provide good services. But feel free to browse and keep your eyes open, because that is there. I do custom art. I can do custom cards as well. I'm really into that for weddings, birthdays, graduations, all that stuff. So I'm going to shut up with the self-promotion. I'll put all the links down in the description. And without further ado, I'm going to begin. So we have verse 21, and it says, "And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt." So he is referring to Ishmael. Ishmael in verse 20, which is in part 1 of chapter 21 of Genesis, that I'll put in the description. In verse 20, it says, "And God was with the lad, and he grew and dwelt in the wilderness and became an archer." In this story, Ishmael was left under a bush by Hagar, and all that does is it symbolizes you having to discard the old version of yourself. I explained that again in part 1, so you can take a look at that. He grew, became a great archer. You had to discard that part of yourself because you're ready to transcend the limiting beliefs you once had, which is why Ishmael becomes an archer, because when you transcend your limiting beliefs, you get very good at pointing out what's wrong and hitting the bullseye and hitting the bullseye of who you want to be. You're no longer wavering, right? The arrow isn't fluttering and kind of hitting like the other circles that are like a little bit bigger. No, you hit the mark because you know what you want. And harmatia in Latin means missing the mark, and that's where the word sin came from. So when you're sinning, it has nothing to do with morality. I think that had to do with what's his name, St. Augustine and somebody else, like during maybe the 15th century, I forget, don't quote me on that, but they turned the Bible a lot more morally in the direction of morals. And it then started becoming void of the mysticism. And when you see you're a God on earth, when you see that you can get out of your autoimmune diseases, when you see you can manifest stuff for free, like I did the other day, I manifested these contacts for free. And I didn't need to go to a doctor or get a doctor's note or anything. I didn't have to pay a copay, none of it. It just came in. And it's like, when you see that you have the capacity to create these beautiful things in front of you, that is when you're embodying the archetype of Jesus, because you can make a deaf man hear and a blind man see, right? So all that is allegory for you being able to do the impossible, right? Miracles are not a one-off thing that happens to some people sometimes, and God chooses maybe that you're worthy. It's like, no, when you wake up to I am consciousness, you are decreeing a thing. I am wealthy. Do not waver. Say, I am wealthy. When I started saying that, and I make a certain amount of money, I started getting opportunities on LinkedIn reflected back to me that had the amount of money I wanted to make per hour. And normally I don't experience that, right? The old version of Michelle wouldn't experience that. She would only get mirrors of her limiting beliefs. Now that I say, no, I don't give a shit, I make this much money, it starts getting mirrored back to you. I start getting text messages from people, you know, they could be spam, they could be legit. It doesn't matter. Even though it's spam, that could be a wavering belief of you not thinking that you deserve it. But regardless, it's still showing you proof that what you're thinking is getting reflected back to you. So when you get that text message and you're like, oh, it's spam, like, I knew this didn't work. No, right? That's a test. Say, I get legit offers. I only get legit offers. People love my work. People love me because I'm me. I don't need a prerequisite. I don't need a certification. I was born perfect. I was made in God's image. Why the fuck would I need a piece of paper to tell me different, right? So I get very heated at that because I've lived in such a lack mindset for such a long time, especially being an artist, right? They don't want artists to thrive, because if you were to create art into society, then you would create inspiration, which would allow other people to have an imagination, which would give them the practice to visualize what they want to experience. And the society we live in does not want that, because if you had successful artists, which you can be so successful as an artist, the limiting lack beliefs is what prevents anyone from doing it. And that's why they do that. That's why eating your paintings is a saying, because they indoctrinate us to think we're small. No, somebody out there, I used to think nobody would like this. I used to think this was shit, right? Somebody out there is going to love this. I don't know who, I don't care who. I love it. And somebody out of 8 billion people has to. And I say that not because I'm a narcissist. I say that because I'm God. And I want to respect the gifts I'm given. And I say that because I want you to do that too. If you love cooking, go be the best fucking chef this world has ever seen. And don't let anyone tell you different. I don't care if you only specialize in lobster or like, cheesecake, whatever. Do it awesome, be happy, and live in the wish fulfilled. I promise you, somebody's gonna order like something from you for like a custom wedding thing that's like a private party, and you're gonna get so much money. But you have to live in that. You have to indoctrinate yourself. Don't let society indoctrinate you. Don't let society program you. You do that. It's your responsibility to take back your power, and you do that by not getting distracted. You do that by distracting yourself with the life you want to live in your imagination, in your emotions, and in your belief in self, okay? So I went off on a huge tangent there, okay? And I actually had to watch it back to be like, what was I even talking about? But I brought up the concept of hamartia and sin. And the reason why, in my opinion, that sin was brought in, I think it was either the 15th century, I think I brought up. It could be totally wrong on the timing, but stay with me here. The concept still applies. When you tell people that something mystic in nature is now a moral thing, now you give them a reason to fear something. And when you fear something in your subconscious, what has to happen? That gets reflected back to you. So when the churches took the concept of mysticism, made it more morally bound, more logical bound, more literally bound, they indirectly took power of your subconscious and programmed you to feel fear, lack, shame, and guilt about something being bigger than you and you being born your problem. You're born a sinner. How dare you be alive? Dude, I was made in God's image. I was made in his likeness. If God made me a sinner, that means he is too. Why is no one asking that question? Right? Maybe they are. I doubt I'm the first, but I like to point that out. So the reason why it was taken from hamartia to sin, because when you now make people feel morally guilty, right? For all my Catholics out there, Catholic guilt, hey, I'm a victim, woohoo, so fun. When you feel bad about something, it means you judge it, which means you don't receive it, which is Catholic guilt about money. Oh no, give your money away, don't make any, God, you can't be selfish. Sound familiar? Right? Not me anymore. I think differently because everything is ours by divine right. We were told differently because God forbid you found that out. How much abundance would 8 billion people create in this world? If 8 billion people were on the same page of understanding their thoughts, their emotions, their judgments, created their reality, we wouldn't need a system to depend on like that. But that would require all of us to be in alignment. And that's the direction we're heading. We're in the age of Aquarius, right? So I bring all of that up. I bring up the hamartia, I bring up the sin thing because I wanted to talk about Ishmael and why he became an archer. When you can control your conscious awareness of what you judge, right? Being the child, the old limiting beliefs you had thrown under a bush for dead, you have to sacrifice that part. It doesn't mean you actually die. What it means is you transcend, right? Like a phoenix from the ashes. You have to let go of your limiting beliefs. That was your old identity. You might cry. Hagar did because that was her son. And you might cry because that old version of you is something you held on to for a very long time. If you're not your baggage, who are you, right? We have attachments to our own baggage because if we don't have baggage, we don't belong to a specific club anymore. Oh, that's the club of depression. That's the club of anxiety. Oh, hey, those are the club of XYZ, right? It's all, we all hang out because we're all miserable in our own way. Heaven forbid you recognize joy. It's funny how isolating you have to be in this day and age, because you see how the Matrix has programmed us to feel lack, so we don't receive abundance, and so we depend on them. Do you get what I'm saying? So Ishmael didn't die, he just transcended in his consciousness. And Ishmael transcending in his consciousness is essentially Abraham doing that. Because again, any character related to the main one in this story is a reflection of the inner work getting done to the psychology of that person. So Abraham, being you, is allegory for you, the human being who's going through all the inner work. has aspects of himself. He has men, right? He had Pharaoh. He had King Abimelech. He had Lot. He has Ishmael. All these are men, and all of these men represent aspects of the masculine nature, which is the ego, the mind, the thoughts, the judgments. Abraham also has Sarah. Abraham also has Hagar, right? Hagar, whatever. Probably other people that are women. He's got maidservants, women servants. These are all aspects of the feminine nature serving you internally. So that's the emotions, that's the intuition, that is the feeling state, right? That is the spiritual side of you. The masculine nature is the mind side of you. So Ishmael becoming an archer is just showing, hey, no, I reclaim a new focused attention. I'm not nearly as much of a savage as I was when I was left for dead under a bush, in the sense of an uncontrolled mind, because that was in the wilderness, right? So now we have now we have verse 1, and I'll just read it one more time. And he dwelt in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. So Paran means to glorify, to beautify, to adore, or it comes from that root word, and it is the desert region or wilderness. So the way I take this is you're making the wilderness beautiful. You're making your mind beautiful. You're making peace with it. You're coming into union with it. And his mother Hagar took him a wife out of the land of Egypt. Hagar being a maidservant to Sarah, and Sarah being the divine aspect to Abraham, right? Hagar is representing the lower nature of the feminine, right? Sarah is the higher nature, Hagar is the lower, because Hagar is Sarah's servant. Hagar choosing a wife for Ishmael, right? Ishmael cannot choose, in my opinion, a wife because he isn't living in the wish fulfilled. He's a mind. The masculine nature will always be a tool, at least at this point in time that I'm reading the Bible. You know, who knows? Maybe King David picks his wife or whatever. Like, I don't even know. I've yet to get there. Maybe I'll think differently in the future. But for right now, how I see it is Ishmael cannot choose a wife because even though you leveled up your awareness, you're still not the promised Isaac. The mind, right, represents Ishmael. Isaac represents your spirit. Even though he's a man, it doesn't matter. Think Cain and Abel. Cain represents the most savage part of your mind, and Abel represents the most spiritual and pure part of your mind, right? They're very polarized, and that's why Cain kills Abel. He doesn't actually, it's allegory, but it references you being a child. And when you're a child, and when you look at a toddler, what do you see? Manipulation at its finest. I would know, I'm an aunt. So I see it, and they're great kids, but you see the deception immediately. And maybe it's just kids in America. Maybe kids elsewhere are raised differently where this doesn't happen. I don't really know. I'm speaking from my experience. But you see the two kids fighting. It's my toy. I don't want to share. That's my toy, right? And it's not like they're like that 24/7. It's just that instant bark, that instant bite, right? Like a snake coming at you. It's not controlled. It's not tamed. Right? And that is referencing Cain killing Abel. The immediate reaction. You killed your spirit, dude. You're on some program. That's what it is. It's pissed. It's agitated. And if the mind knew there was more enough abundance in the world, it wouldn't be pissed. It wouldn't be agitated. But that takes refining the mind. That takes reincarnation of the masculine nature, which is why Cain and Abel must die, because that part of you being a toddler when you were 4 years old fighting off over a toy has also died, right? You still exist, but that mindset of yours hopefully is dead and long gone. Okay, so you can see how Cain and Abel represent a cycle changing in your awareness when it goes to Noah, okay? And then it goes to Abraham. And then you birth the second incarnation of Cain and Abel, which is Isaac and Ishmael, all right? And I don't know, maybe Ishmael kills Isaac in the future. I don't know, I haven't gotten there yet. I don't know what their relationship is, but I'm sure their dynamic will be a lot more kind in nature than Cain and Abel's were, right? It'll be less polarizing. There'll be conflicts, but it won't be nearly as aggressive as sudden, right? I feel like that story was super quick. Cain just literally killed Abel because God rejected his gift. He's like, F you. And it's like, dude, like, holy cow. But there are people like that in the world. They have a short fuse, and it's because they haven't done the inner work. They haven't tamed their mind or lived in their spirit. Okay? So Ishmael really can't pick a wife because he's the mind, and the mind is just a tool for you. If you build a shed, and the shed is your visualization, do you glorify the tool? You're like, oh my God, thank God for this hammer. I'm just gonna hold on to this hammer forever, and like this is the best part of the entire process. It's like, no, the hammer is just the tool, right? The visualization, the wish fulfilled, the shed that you built that's beautiful is the promise, is Isaac. So you can see how the hammer will never be the shed, because the hammer, yes, it created the shed. It was a tool that created it, but the end result isn't the hammer being phenomenal or fantastic or whatever. It's what you visualize to create with the hammer. So it's the same with your mind. It's not to say the hammer isn't awesome, because if you didn't have a mind, you couldn't understand the power of creation. You need it. It's just a tool, though. It's not the promise. So Ishmael cannot pick a wife because he's just the tool. Isaac can, however. He chooses Rebecca, and he doesn't choose it, though. His servant does. He sent out a servant to pick Rebecca, and that in itself has its own symbolic layering. But you see that it was Isaac's will to send a servant. Ishmael didn't have a choice. Hagar just picked it. So you see how the power is in Isaac to choose, but for Ishmael, there was none. So Hagar picks a wife for Ishmael that just mirrors the limiting beliefs that Ishmael still has. Even though he became an archer, you still have a wavering mind. So it's he found a woman. Hagar gave him a woman that matches the level up that he has, but it essentially is also mirroring the concept you cannot attract that in which you think you don't deserve, right? If you have a limiting belief, you will only match the limiting belief, and then it'll get mirrored back to you. Okay? Then we have verse 22. And it came to pass at that time that Abimelech, see, I always say Abimelech. Is it Abimelech? I don't even care. And I think Fichol, I'll just say Fichol, whatever. Fichol, the chief captain of his host, spake unto Abraham, saying, God is with thee in all that thou doest. So out of nowhere, King Abimelech and out this guy, the chief captain, comes with him, and it's just like, hey, God is with you all the time. So if this was literal, you'd be like, King Abimelech, where have you been? Like, it just seems very random, right? It's like a guest appearance, and out of nowhere, here's this chief. Why is this relevant, right? So from a mystic lens, how I understand this is after Abraham birthed the promise of Isaac, that is you living in the wish fulfilled, right? And your mind will doubt you on your manifestation journey if you are capable of receiving it is what you want, because again, society programs us to feel lack, so we don't experience anything beyond lack. You know what I mean? So it keeps us in bondage because our minds are being controlled. But when you break out of that system and recognize that literally you can do anything you want, it's just about removing the limiting beliefs you have, then you become a God on earth. And that's very threatening to a system that doesn't want you to know that. So the fact that Abimelech is coming with the chief and saying God is with you at all times, that you do stuff, right? Me getting these contacts, if I was to waver and say, you know, I need a doctor's note, I need to pay a copay, I need to go to get my yearly eye exam, I need to go through all this red tape and all these hoops in order to get what it is I want, in order to get contacts, that would be a very literal approach. That would be a very system dependent approach, right? Because I have to pay money, I have to follow their rules, blah, blah, blah. Their rules are a human construct that come from the mind. If I think differently from my mind, what has to happen? If I'm a God in my own world, my experience has to come to pass. It just depends on how much conviction I have, which again means faith, right? The foundation of religion. But faith just seems like hope in any church I go to. I just hope this will happen. You have to have conviction, okay? So I got these contacts without needing to go through the red tape of thinking I have to make all these payments, make an appointment, get a doctor's note, blah, 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 all that stuff. The old me, the mind would say, I don't know if you can do that, Michelle. Like, you've never done something like that before. That seems kind of crazy. Can you really do that? Is it possible? Really? Am I me? Can I? You sure? When you see that you can do that, which I had done, and which I have been doing for other things in my life, you see how much power you really do have. And then King Abimelech and the chief, which represent your mind, because remember, any men represent aspects of your mind, your judgments, your ego, your thoughts, things of that nature. And him being a king, and the chief being his right-hand man, the king being the hierarchy of your conscious awareness, your mind, right? And the chief that supports anything the king echoes, goes to you and said, God is with you in all things you do. That is me getting these contacts, even though my mind may have thought maybe I couldn't a time or two, and then opening the box in which they came in, okay? That proves to your mind that you can do a lot of things you never thought you could. And that's when King Abimelech comes to you, meaning your mind, and says, hey, you did it. God is with you in all things you decree. Right? That is your mind surrendering to your spirit, being like, you're right. I'm just a tool. I thought I was a king. I thought I was the almighty one. I thought I was in control. No, when you dwell in your spirit, it means you're coming from the place of being the observer, right? You visualize a shed. You use the hammer to build the shed. It comes to fruition. You visualize wanting a car. You say it with your mind. This is my budget. This is the color. I get it. Always. Always get what I want. No one deserves anything more than I do. When you think that, again, it sounds very narcissistic, but you need to claim this for your own conviction. And you will see that these things will come to pass. And the more you practice it, the less resistance you'll have. And the more you'll just genuinely believe that you are God because it's true. We're not taught this because imagine, again, 8 billion people knowing this. It's very threatening to a system that doesn't want you to wake up. Then we have verse 23. Now therefore swear unto me here by God that thou wilt not deal falsely with me, nor with my son, nor with my son's son, but according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, thou shalt do unto me and to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. So here, King Abimelech is going up to Abraham and saying, like, listen, I just surrendered myself to you in the sense of saying, I know I'm not as powerful as I thought I was. Again, your mind being like, whoo, I know I'm just a tool. I know I'm not your personality. You get to choose whoever you want to be. Whatever you think, meaning when you use me, has to happen. And you control that from being a spirit, from being the observer. King Abimelech is like, this is crazy. This is really cool. But promise me that you will not deal falsely with me. Do not overuse me. How cool is that? King Abimelech, the mind. The mind is telling you, do not overthink, right? Do not overthink with my son, other aspects of my judgments, nor with my son's son. If I judge something and then I get triggered, I get reprogrammed, and then I birth a new reaction, right? Don't falsely deal with those judgments I have. Don't create those in me. Let's work together. Let's work in unison. So when my mind is controlled and I only think beautiful, happy things, you will work in according to the kindness that I have done unto thee, allowing you to come in, allowing the Spirit to come in, allowing Sarah to share space with King Abimelech. That is your divine masculine and your divine feminine working in balance within your psychology, within your mind. And to the land wherein thou hast sojourned. Do anything you want, where you are, when you're in your inner nature, but act kindly. Right? That's kind of telling the reader, meaning me and you know the power of the mind. You just birthed Isaac and the mind knows it. You just got contacts, Michelle, and the mind knew it. Now that you know your power, do not go against it. Work in respect, work in union, harmony with yourself. Verse 24, and Abraham said, I will swear. So this is you saying, I pinky promise to myself, I'm not going to fall asleep because I know I'm the conscious creator, and it is far too cool to be an absolute wizard on earth to fall asleep to. When you understand that the sorting hat in Harry Potter is literally just aspects of your psychology you can choose, and literally any mass movie is explaining the power of creation through a biblical concept, right? Like the story of like light and dark is just correlating to the idea of your subconscious being the dark and the good people being the light or conscious awareness, right? So it's like all of religion is about sun worship. When the sun doesn't come back, we all literally die because you need the sun to live, right? That's why the sun brings back the life to the world, because the only son of God is the son of the Father, and Father Sky holds the sun in place. That's what it's about, okay? And then Father Sky will then impregnate Mother Earth with fluid and then create creation, which is allegory for rain. But for men and women, you see how the symbolism works, okay? And then the sun, when you're living in conscious awareness, keeps bringing light and keeps birthing a beautiful creation on earth. And it's a cycle: Father, Son, Mother. It's about literally nature and consciousness. All right, so Abraham's like, I swear I'm going to not fall asleep to my power, and thank you, mind, for reminding me. Very mature for the mind to do. Verse 25, and Abraham reproved Abimelech because of a well of water, which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away. So I looked up the word reprov, and I'm also going to make a side comment about people in the spiritual religious community that 100% just eats at me. I hate it so much. And I don't care. You're like, oh, that's an ego thing to hate. I don't care. I'm a human being. I'm allowed to have one. So are you. Use it. The word reprove means to expose or to correct. So here, Abraham is correcting Abimelech, saying, hey, I had a well of water which was taken away from me through your servants, and essentially I want that water back. What that means is it's allegory for when you are barren, you no longer have water or the spirit flowing through you because your mind is taking over. Abimelech's servants took the well away. It never said when the well was constructed, right? It doesn't specify what well. I don't think it doesn't say anywhere that it was built. So you can see how it's not a literal well because it doesn't exist. It doesn't tell you when it happened. And then someone might come at me and be like, well, it's here. So because of a well of water which Abimelech's servants had violently taken away, you see that it's there. And it's just like, okay, well, what does that do for you? What does that do for you through your psychology, your spirit, feeling who you are on earth? Does this really make you sleep better at night to know that Abraham built a well? Or if you understood you can manifest literally anything in your life, would that make you feel better? I think the latter. So if we can just drop the idea of saying like, well, no, it is literal, maybe, but okay, go with that. Live your life thinking all of this is literal, and let me know how the end of your life is when you get to it. Like, not to be morbid, but like, give me the receipts of how beautiful your life is, knowing that your Savior never came. Because the second coming of Christ is the second coming of your awareness. And that sounds super rude on my end, but like it gets to that point. And I'm pretty sure actually, like it's to that point of like kind of being fed up to an extent. And that's why I do what I do, because I want to give people's power back. Thinking this is all literal keeps you in bondage. If I'm going through stuff in my head and I sit in a pew and I'm like, oh, Abraham lost his well. It's like, yeah, okay, well, I lost my house. How is this going to help me? You know? And it's like, well, if he didn't have a lack mindset, maybe that could be reversed. There's always the power of being able to reverse a situation that had happened to an extent, right? So, and I guess the extent depends on how much you believe against yourself. So here, the fact that Abraham was barren, not thinking Isaac would come, implies the concept of the water, the well being taken away. Abimelech, the servants, being aspects of the mind, will come back and take away your spirit or the water or the well, right? That gives you all of the nourishment you need through water. Again, allegory for the feminine nature, because you're overthinking, you're doubting Isaac won't come. But because Isaac finally came, because your manifestation was finally birthed into reality, Abraham's going to call out the servant. Abraham's going to call out the mind, saying, hey, remember that thing, the spirit that you doubted so much? This is Abraham literally talking to his mind. Give back the well, because the well exists. I am the well, okay? And again, well is spirit. Water you can see as spiritual nourishment because, again, like with all the traditions that we do that are literal in nature, like baptism, that actually don't do anything for anyone spiritually, symbolically what that means is it's purifying, it's cleansing. So water cleansing a child when they're born is to, I guess, initiate them into the church. But like, whatever, I take a bath all the time. I go out in the rain all the time. Does that mean I'm Catholic? Like the actual action of doing that, putting water on you, does nothing. It's the symbolism behind it. And okay, yes, getting, you know, water smeared on you to go into a church, great. But like, what does that do for you as an individual person, knowing your inner power as the creator? I'd argue nothing, because I've gone through the process and nothing came of it. So Abraham is essentially, through this verse, restoring his spirit and taking the spirit back from the servants, which are allegory for the mind. And again, the mind will take you over and make you forget your spirit, but you have to reclaim your will. You have to reclaim it. Okay, verse 26. And Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this thing, neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard of I of it, but today. So is it today or is it today? It might be actually today. I don't know. Either way, I'll figure it out later. But here, essentially, King Abimelech is just like, I don't understand. Wait a second. No, but I forgot. Back. The word for prov. I'm going to like go back actually a little bit. The word, because in verse 25, remember I said like all this one thing people do in the spiritual community that I hate. Reprov means to expose or to correct. So Abraham did that to, what's it called? To Abimelech, okay? He's like, give me back my spirit. You know it exists. You saw I manifested Isaac. You saw I manifested those contacts, right? But it also means rebuke. And I hate that word so much. Oh my God. Because in the Catholic or like whatever, like there's people online and they're like, let's say it's like a pentagram on the ground or something, and then there's like some person dancing on TikTok around it, and they're like, oh, Satan, nah. And then the person in the comments, I rebuke in the name of Jesus. It's like, what does that do you? What does saying I rebuke in the name of Jesus do for you? As if doing that will actually help. Did you know a pentagram was actually good before society made it bad? Similar to the swastika. Do you not see how stupid and indoctrinated we become when we forget the symbolism behind the actual meaning of things? So it's my anger coming out at this, because we focus on, I think personally, the wrong things. It's just like, it's not evil, it's not demonic. The only thing that's demonic is you believing in the demonism of it, and then that will get mirrored back to you. Your psychology and your mind is so freaking vast, and I don't think anyone will generally understand it, but understanding reality as a mirror is the most important part, because if you believe in hexes, you will get hexed and most likely die, if that's what the hex is, right? But if you don't believe in hexes, you're going to walk away, similar to voodoo. If someone's like, I'm going to cast voodoo on you, and I'm going to poke you here, and I'll do all this stuff. Okay, great, poke me all you want. It's not going to do anything because I don't believe in it. If I don't give my conviction away to you, and I keep the power for myself, what you say to me indirectly cannot hurt me. All you can try to do is manipulate me to have fear, and the fear will get mirrored back to me. Do you see what I'm saying? So when you say, oh, I rebuke in the name of Jesus, it's just like, okay, go ahead. Like in the comments, there's so many people saying that, but what does that do for you through your religion? It doesn't do anything, because what you fear doesn't exist, but they make you think it. You don't have to rebuke anything. You just have to know who you are, and you are God. So I'm going to go to verse 26, and it says, and Abimelech said, I wot not who hath done this thing, neither didst thou tell me, neither yet heard I of it, but today. So here, King Abimelech is essentially telling Abraham, like, listen, I don't remember taking away your well or something. This is the first time I've ever heard of such a thing, okay? And notice how Abraham said that to Abimelech, referring to his servants doing it, okay? This is the cool part, and I love this. Because in a way, you can look at this and see that your mind, King Abimelech, right? Your conscious awareness is either asleep or awake. And depending on what part of it is, the mind, the tool, right, that you're using, there's other subsects of your mind, which are the other programs you have, right? And how I'll say that is like, let's say it's a reaction to money. And somebody says like, oh, you'll never make money doing that thing, right? You're going to have a reaction. That is one servant, okay? Then somebody else says, you know, eating carbs is bad for you, you're going to have a reaction, right? That's another subsect. That's another servant. You have all these different servants based on what you hear and see that get programmed in your King Abimelech or in your mind. And when you see that your servants are programmed all throughout your psychology and you don't remember, Abimelech didn't remember. He's like, I didn't take your well. It's because one of your subconscious beliefs did. Right? That references the concept of you having a mirror reflection back to you that you're not aware of. Let's say you're doing like a carnivore diet, right? And then you switch to being vegan for whatever reason. And on carnivore, there's all these different science papers and like proof of evidence that you're going to be a better functioning human being by following this blueprint, right? But then you have the vegan community. And in the vegan community, they have all of their own way of specifying why their way is the best way, okay? And so you're going to carnivore because you're more enticed to be a vegan. You make the switch and you're really believing it. But you have that aspect of being carnivore still in you, being like, well, I don't know, do I have all the fatty acids I really need here? Can I really get them all from nuts? Well, what about all like, omega-3s, you would get from fish? Like, I don't get that really as much here, right? You'll have this like inner dialogue that you're not sure is still there or not. And because that programming is there, that servant is there, it's going to take away part of your reality because you're not fully invested in being a vegan. That doubt is still going to mirror back to you and probably cause you some kind of digestive issue or some kind of symptom that proves that your diet is deficient because you're not fully in belief, you're not fully convinced. And that's because you're not fully awake. If you were fully awake of literally everything you have programs of, you would see exactly why your life is the way it is. You would remember everything. But that's why King Abimelech doesn't remember. Because again, King Abimelech represents your mind as an umbrella, and then all of the servants represent aspects of your judgment. Just because you have a majority of them cleared out doesn't mean you still don't have a couple. And the fact that you don't remember is exactly for that reason, right? The couple are going to make you forget because you fall asleep to it. So King Abimelech is by his surprise, and similar to your surprise, be like, well, what gives? I didn't do that. And same with you, you're going to have a reaction. What gives? Why am I having this reaction? I thought vegan was being great. Well, you still have that belief still programmed in you from a different diet. All right, now we have verse 27. And Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, and both of them made a covenant. I thought this was so funny because I had a flashback to verse 14 to 15 in chapter 20 of Genesis, okay? And it says in this reference, and Abimelech gave Abraham sheep and oxen and men servants and women servants and gave him lands and sent him away. As soon as I read this verse in 27, and Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them unto Abimelech, I was like, are you just re-gifting Christmas gifts? Like, this is, listen, I love the sheep and oxen you gave me, but I think they'll be better for you. It's like, when you get like somebody gives you like a really ugly sweat and you're like, oh, thanks. Maybe Sarah will like this for her birthday, it's so funny. But it's not about regifting gifts. It's about the symbolism behind it. So sheep represent the divine feminine and oxen represent the divine masculine. And I'm sure maybe you can see it through an allegory lens. Why? As like basic symbolism. And it's sheep represent the divine thoughts. The first people to, or I believe the first people to visit Jesus were sheep or shepherds, right? And shepherds watch their sheep, meaning shepherds represent people who watch their divine thoughts. They're fully conscious. So the fact that Jesus was visited by sheep first or shepherds first was he was visited only by people who had the capacity to create like this, right? Because you watch your divine thoughts, you watch your judgments. So that's why Jesus can also create miracles, because he was in alignment to that mindset, only being able to create divine thoughts. He wasn't born of a man. He was born of a virgin woman, meaning virgin consciousness, pure emotional state, pure spiritual state. Of course you can manifest purely, because that's the whole point of us. That's the whole point of manifestation, getting contacts for free. You see what I'm saying? It's don't allow the mind to trick you out of getting what it is you feel you deserve. Let your mind be a tool to visualize, to see, to constantly repeat what it is you want to experience, and it will get mirrored back to you. So sheep represent the feminine nature because they represent divine thoughts. Oxen are very masculine in nature because they're work animals, and the masculine nature is power, right? It's the mind, which is the ego, which is raw power, and it's physical action taking. So that's why oxen are referencing to the masculine nature. So Abraham is restoring to Abimelech the divine feminine and the divine masculine in him. But also keep in mind, Abimelech is an aspect of Abraham. All this is talking about is balance, right? I'm going to restore my mind with balance because I'm restored in my spirit with balance. And as a conscious creator, I am in harmony. That's how I understand this verse. And both of them made a covenant. Abraham promised his mind he would not fall asleep again. And Abimelech essentially is saying, I'm going to stay in my lane if you keep your end of the deal, right? Then we have verse 28. And Abraham set 7, I think it's ewe lambs of the flock by themselves. So here, I think ewe lambs are female lambs specifically, and they're 7, because when you have a lamb, again, like I said, that represents the feminine nature, it's doubling down on specifying that by saying ew, ew, females, no. Ewy? I don't know how to say it, but 7 in numerology, from what I understand, represents the spiritual nature, right? Divine intervention, spiritual intervention. So Abraham set spiritual intervention, a flock of sheep that he picked out specifically to gift to Abimelech. It was very much a conscious decision. It was very much guided, you know, and think of like a guided meditation. You're consciously sitting in that position or whatever you are in your headspace, closing your eyes, doing the inner work, feeling your mind, being in balance with yourself. That is you sending out 7 sheep, right? Verse 29, and Abimelech said unto Abraham, what mean these 7 ewe lambs which thou hast set by themselves? I thought this was so freaking funny because it 100% points out how the mind operates, right? Abimelech is like, whoa, I saw the power of the spirit and the mind in action. How cool is that? Holy cow, Abraham, like if you make a promise to me to not fall asleep, then I promise I'm going to stay in my lane. And because Abimelech represents the mind, it's hysterical. He's like, what do you mean I get these lambs? If you understand allegory, the mind is like, what do you mean spirit? What are you talking about? It completely forgets. It completely disassociates because we completely forget, because we completely disassociate, because we have programs, right? And it's funny because in the next verses, in verse 31, it says they go, oh wait, no, sorry. Where is that verse? Oh, sorry, no, verse 32. It says, they returned into the land of the Philistines, referring to the chief and King Abimelech. Philistines means to evade, which is symbolic of the home of the mind, right? That is the home base for the mind, to invade, because the mind will invade your spiritual nature. Abimelech goes back to being in his, like, going back into the state of what a mind is. You know, programmable, very easy to forget things. It's just hysterical to see the mind completely black out literally everything it just learned. Do you know what I mean? Because we do that too as conscious creators when we're first starting out, you know, and I'll 100% say that that was me in the beginning. I'd be like, aware of it, seeing it happen, completely fall asleep to it, think something outside of me is like showing me the way, giving me signs, all of this. Everything is a reflection of you. There are no signs, there are no symbols. It's just you getting projected outwardly. And when you recognize that, you don't need to have anyone guide you or whatever, because you see you're guiding yourself. You know, things fall into place because when you visualize something, think, feel, and whatever, it's like synchronicities are just inner expressions of what you want to experience. So just dive into the opportunities that you're faced with and just see life play out in front of you, right? So I just thought that was hysterical because Abimelech was like, what do you mean the spirit? Who's that? You're like, dude, what? We just went through this. We went through this and we're going to keep going through it through different characters because that's all the Old Testament is about, is going through a reincarnation of your mind. I thought it was so funny. Verse 30, and he said, for these 7 ewe lambs shalt thou take of my hand, that they may be a witness unto me that I have digged this well. So here Abraham is talking to Abimelech, just reinforcing the concept of giving 7 lambs. The fact that he's saying take of my hand is like implying the concept of using a tool, right? So it's like when I have a pair of scissors, just like let's say they were on the ground, they would just be like on the ground. but because I'm taking them in my hand, I'm wielding them for something. It's a tool for something. So here, the fact that Abraham was like, I'm going to take these into my hand, the 7 ewe lambs, means I'm going to take my spiritual nature and use it as a tool, right? To go out there and be a God on earth and show you the power of the mind and the spirit when it's in harmony. And he's like essentially saying like, let this be a symbolic way to allow others to witness this power, okay? That I've digged this well. And the well, again, is just remembering you have a spirit within you. All right, verse 31, wherefore he called that place Beersheba, because there they swear both of them. So I thought this was cool. The breakdown of the word Beersheba in Hebrew is, I think it's be'er, which is a well, a source of water. And then Sheba or Sheba is 7 or oath. So you either have the well of the oath or the well of the 7. And this concept is referencing the idea that Abraham offered 7 lambs, which is just spiritual intervention of the feminine nature back into the mind, right? So they swore, the mind promised the person that has the mind in them. So you are basically having a conversation with your mind saying, deal, I'm not going to fall asleep again, even though literally King Abimelech just did. We're going to figure it out together. I think it's so hysterical that they're like, I promise you I'm not going to fall asleep. And literally the man did in verse 30. It's so funny. Because again, that's just what the mind does. It falls asleep and it does its best when you're aware of it and you work in union with yourself, right? So verse 32, thus they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech rose up and I think again, Fishtold, the chief captain of his host, and they returned into the land of the Philistines. So again, Abimelech and his chief, they went to the Philistines, like I had said before. Palash is the root word of Philistine, or it's related to the Philistines, and what that means is to invade. So the mind, the land in which is called to invade, is where Abimelech and the chief go. Abimelech and the chief represent the mind, and the mind invades you, your spirit, when it overthinks. So essentially here, when both the king and the chief leave, what that is symbolic of is the mind knowing its place, right? And Abraham then is left to dwell with his mind in check, with the spirit presumably in check. Sarah hasn't spoken, but it's very on par with the feminine nature not to, because from what I see and from what I understand, really the feminine nature speaks very little so far. It's mostly like the men talking, you know? And that's because in the Old Testament, your mind talks a lot, right? When you're waking up. And you have to have these inner conflicts and these inner dialogues with your mind, fighting your spirit, trying to understand who's who, along with your emotions, right? That's a very hard thing to understand. What's the difference between my mind? What's the difference between my emotions? And what's the difference between my spirit? And when you sit with yourself and you wrestle with yourself, right? Like I'm pretty sure in the future, Jacob wrestles with God. And it's because we do that. We wrestle with our inner nature. We don't know what's the feminine and what's the masculine. That sounds so crazy when you're first trying to understand all this stuff. But when you really sit in silence for a majority of your days and you witness your thoughts and you witness your feelings and you really see how reality plays back to you, you start really getting good at being conscious. And when you get good at being conscious, then you start being able to create what you want in your life, right? You have more conviction on what it is that you will experience because you've seen life play out in front of you the way you thought it would, because you visualized correctly, you lived in the wish fulfilled, and boom, that became your reality. So now the mind is in check, the spirit's in check, and Abraham is left just hanging out. And then we're going to go to chapter 22. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this one. I thought it was a funny one. I thought it was hopefully short and sweet and made sense to you guys. Let me know what you think. You can follow me on TikTok as well. Check out my Etsy store. I also do graphic design. You can check me out on my website, michellekozak, KOZAK.com. And yeah, check out my children's book, like I said before. And if you have any custom art ideas that you want me to bring to life, I would love to do that for you. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching and have a good one.